Hello friends, welcome back to my show. April 14th is celebrated as Ambedkar Jayanti, and it was on this day, back in 1891, Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar was born in a cantonment town called Mahu, which is in Madhya Pradesh. This video is a tribute and we shall recall his writings and views on Islam. I finally leave it up to you to determine whether by today's standards you would judge him to be an Islamophobe or not. That is one who is prejudiced against or opposed to Islam. Before I proceed any further, I would like to put up a disclaimer followed by a claimer. The disclaimer first, this video is purely for academic and educational purposes and has no political agenda. It is not meant to criticize or hurt any person or community. If you do not agree with the content or you feel disturbed, please stop watching. This is as advised by the Supreme Court of India. And now for my claim. The purpose of this video is to critique the works of Bharat Ratna Shri Babasaheb Ambedkar. It is based on the writings and speeches of Dr. Ambedkar, which have been referenced at the end of the video. I would like to acknowledge my gratitude and inspiration to the book Snakes in the Ganga, subtitled Breaking India 2.0, and it is authored by Shri Rajiv Malhotra and Vijaya Vishwanathan. This book is a scholarly work and it spans 812 pages with over 1000 references. So what I intend to do is make short videos on different topics out of this book to spread the message and to encourage my viewers to buy this book. The link to Amazon India is shown on the screen. We are all aware of the political alliance between All India Majlis-e-Ittihadul Muslimin and the Vanchit Bahujan Aghadi, that is AIMIM and VBA. The latter is a party representing Dalits, and in fact it is led by none less than Prakash Ambedkar, the grandson of Babasaheb Ambedkar. But is there any substance in this alliance? Is there any common ground between AIMIM, a Muslim party, and VBA, the party to represent Dalits? This video will explore Babasaheb Ambedkar's teachings and views on Muslims. And then you'll question yourself, is this just a honeymoon or a one-night stand? Listen to this clip of their campaign song. Here is a headline from August 2016, published by the Times of India, which says, Owaisi, that is the leader of AIMIM, raising the slogan Jai Bhim, Jai Meme. And below that you will find the headline of the editorial in Turnicle 2 years later, asking why Jai Bhim, Jai Meme is silent on the brutal killing of Dalits by Muslims. Aren't Dalits sleeping with people that Babasaheb distrusted and despised and warned them against their atrocities? Babasaheb was in fact a prolific writer and a very powerful orator. And he wrote on history, law, religion, social reform, Dalit issues, economics, and so many other topics. Academically, he was awarded 2 PhDs, one from Columbia University in the US and the second from London School of Economics. In this video, I shall be quoting extensively from Dr. Ambedkar's book titled Pakistan or the Partition of India, which was published in 1940. 7 years before the partition actually took place. This book is a 500-page volume with 14 chapters, and the writing style is rigorous. It can also be described as being very candid, and it is even very audacious at times. Keeping with the trend today, it is very little read and often never quoted, for the simple reason that it is a great embarrassment to the left, liberal and secular brigade. You can read this entire book online at archive.org. Go to the link that you see on the screen. You can also find it in the reference slide at the end of the show. And then on the navigation panel on the left, just scroll down to serial number 40 and you will find the book that I'm quoting from. It is packaged in small 50 to 60 page volumes and it is in 5 parts, followed by the remaining book, which contains the appendices and references. One would think that by default, Dr. Ambedkar would be attracted to Islam, since it claims to obliterate all caste distinction. But look at this headline. Even today, in the year 2023, there are murders of Dalit converts happening in Kerala. So let us explore Islam and caste in India from the point of view of Babasaheb himself. Babasaheb's views are indeed impartial and therefore more valuable because he was not a Hindutva promoter. In fact, he left Hinduism and converted to Buddhism just a few weeks before he died. So we can take his views as objective and unbiased. Here is a quote which succinctly summarizes his views on Islam. And what Babasaheb said was, Islam is a closed corporation and the distinction it makes between Muslims and non-Muslims is a very real, very positive and very alienating distinction. The Brotherhood of Islam is not the universal brotherhood of man. It is the brotherhood of Muslims for Muslims only. Here is a learned man with his feet firmly on the ground and who is aware to the situation that was prevailing in India in the 1940s. Babasaheb takes particular objection to Islam's acceptance and active support of slavery. In his own words, there is nothing whatever in Islam that lends support to the abolition of this curse. Dr. Ambedkar notes, the Mohammedans recognize just two main social divisions, the Ashraf and the Ajlaf. Ashraf means noble and includes undoubted descendants of foreigners and converts from higher caste Hindus. Further, typical Ashraf castes are called Saids or Sayyids, Sheikhs, Pathans, Rizvis and Mughals. This is so far as Dr. Ambedkar goes in identifying the real issues and problems in Islam. He further talks about the low castes, that is the Ajlaf, or also known as the Rasil or the Arzal. Ajlaf or the wretches or mean people are also called Kamina or Rasil, which is worthless. With them, no other Mohammedan would associate, and they are forbidden to enter the mosque to use public burial grounds. This is so far as the discrimination goes for the poor, wretched lower classes in Islam, quite contrary to the claims made by the mullahs. Regarding the attitude of Muslims towards the nation or the spirit of patriotism for that matter, Ambedkar says, and I quote verbatim, among the tenets, one that calls for notice is the tenet of Islam, which says that in a country which is not under Muslim rule, wherever there is a conflict between Muslim law and the law of the land, the former must prevail over the latter, and a Muslim will be justified in obeying the Muslim law and defying the law of the land. A lot of people even today, 80 years after this book was published, are not aware of the reality on the ground, which is really pitiable, even though the rate of literacy has gone up many times over. As far as loyalty is concerned, here is what Ambedkar has to say about the Mussalman. The only allegiance a Mussalman, whether civilian or soldier, whether living under Muslim or under a non-Muslim administration, is commanded by the Quran to acknowledge that his allegiance to God and to his Prophet and to those in authority among the Mussalmans. This is quite a strong statement. In fact, as Dr. Ambedkar observes in his writings, there is no Islamic concept of the motherland. According to him, according to Muslim canon law, the world is divided into two camps, Dar al-Islam, which is the abode of Islam, and Dar al-Harb, which is the abode of war. A country is Dar al-Islam when it is ruled by a Muslim. A country is Dar al-Harb when Muslims only reside in it but are not the rulers of it. So by default, even in a democracy where you'll be having an elected government elected by majority vote, and if that person does not happen to be a Muslim, in that case, that Muslim is living in Dar al-Harb, which is the abode of war, and he will have to therefore perform jihad to get out of that demeaning situation. Dr. Ambedkar continues, and I quote from his book. He says, that being the canon law of the Muslims, India cannot be the common motherland of the Hindus and the Muslimans. It can be the land of Muslimans, but it cannot be the land of Hindus and Muslimans to live as equals. Further down in the book, Dr. Ambedkar says, further, it can be the land of Muslimans only when it is governed by Muslims. The moment the land becomes subject to the authority of a non-Muslim power, it ceases to be the land of Muslims. Instead of being Dar al-Islam, it becomes Dar al-Harb. I'm sure many of you must be shocked by what Dr. Ambedkar has recorded in his books. Here is something more from the Bharat Ratna Ambedkar. To the Muslims, a Hindu is a kafir. A kafir is not worthy of respect. He is low-born and without any status. And that is why a country which is ruled by a kafir is Darul Harb to a Musliman. Given this, no further evidence seems to be necessary to prove that the Muslim will not obey a Hindu government. Let us be quite clear about what Dr. Ambedkar tells us. And he was a learned man. Now this quote from Dr. Ambedkar's book is even more damning. What he says is, the basic feeling of deference and sympathy which predispose persons to obey the authority of government do not simply exist. But if proof is wanted, there is no dearth of it. It is so abundant that the problem is what to tender and what to omit. Now, Dr. Ambedkar was a witness to the violent Khilafat movement, and this is what he observes. In the midst of Khilafat agitation, when the Hindus were doing so much to help the Muslims, the Muslims did not forget that as compared with them, the Hindus were a low and inferior race. Now, most of you must be aware of the Moplah massacre in Kerala in the year 1921. The Moplah Muslim community of Malabar had for 100 years indulged in bouts of murderous rage against the Kafirs. The genocide of Hindus in August and September of 1921 was to oust the British and establish an Islamic state or a caliphate or a khilafat. The Hindus had to be massacred because Kafirs have no place in the land of the pure. This was Dr. Ambedkar for you. Just in order so that you know what was the enormity of this massacre, the official deaths recorded by the British were 2,500 Hindus. Unofficially, they say it was almost 10,000 people who were killed and thrown into wells with their skulls shattered. Over 1 lakh Hindus were forced to leave Kerala. These are the actual figures. Over 100 temples were desecrated and destroyed. The evidence is still there on the ground. Dr. Ambedkar devotes quite a lot of space to the Moplah massacres. Here is an extract of that from his book. The Hindus were visited by a dire fate at the hands of the Moplahs. The massacres, forcible desecration of temples, foul outrages upon women such as ripping open pregnant women, pillage, arson and destruction. In short, all the accompaniments of brutal and unrestrained barbarism were perpetrated freely by the Moplahs upon Hindus until such time as troops could be hurried to the task of restoring order through a difficult and extensive tract of the country. As one can expect, Mr. M.K. Gandhi's response was in stark contrast to that of Dr. Ambedkar, and he sums it up thus. Mr. Gandhi's stand was very punctilious in the matter of condemning any and every act of violence and has forced the Congress, much against its will, to condemn it. Mr. Gandhi has never protested. He never called upon leading Muslims to condemn it. To rub salt into the wounds, Mr. M.K. Gandhi went on to support and praise the perpetrators of this violence. What he wrote was, Moplah bravery must command admiration. Brave, God-fearing Moplahs were fighting for what they consider as religion and in a manner which they consider religious. This is M.K. Gandhi for you. It is so ironical that in modern times, it is made out that Moplah killings were part of a freedom struggle against the British and that Hindus were simply killed because these Kafirs sided with the British. However, a report submitted by C.I. Isaac of the Indian Council of Historical Research has now categorically confirmed that the killings were directed against Hindu society out of sheer intolerance and were motivated only by religion and nothing else. There was no element of nationalism or giving a fight to the British. Let us now fast forward from 1940, when Babasaheb published his book, to present times. I'm talking of 2022 to be precise. Nupur Sharma was a spokesperson for BJP, and in response to another Muslim panelist on a television debate, she quoted verbatim the exact words from Hadith, which is considered to be a religious authority by Muslims. To which there was tremendous embarrassment and offense taken by the Muslim panelist. What transpired is well known. She received death threats by decapitation, Sar-tan-se-juda. The matter heated up and it went to the Supreme Court. And the statement of a judge who called her for having a loose tongue evoked a strong reaction from the entire human community. The whole question that was being asked was, do we live in two Indias where a Muslim has a right to insult Hinduism, as was done by an artist who later took refuge in Doha, and a Hindu can be killed for merely quoting facts from Hadith? Ambedkar had foreseen this situation, and he had a clear-cut solution, and that solution was create separate nations for Hindus and Muslims. And on the creation of these two nations, there should be a complete transfer of populations. Each nation should comprise primarily and only of those following a particular faith. This was Ambedkar's solution. I will now quote Dr. Ambedkar. What he said was that the transfer of minorities is the only lasting remedy for communal peace, and that is beyond any doubt. If that is so, there is no reason why the Hindus and the Muslims should keep on trading in safeguards which have proved unsafe. Dr. Ambedkar was well versed in international affairs, and he continues, if small countries with limited resources like Greece, Turkey and Bulgaria were capable of such an undertaking, there is no reason to suppose that what they did cannot be accomplished by Indians. I continue with the reading of his book. Dr. Ambedkar says that after all, the population involved is inconsiderable, and because some obstacles require to be removed, it would be the height of folly to give up so sure a way of communal peace. So he was very clear that there should be no Muslims remaining in India once the partition had taken place. And I continue further with Dr. Ambedkar's writing. What he said was that we are not weakened by the separation of Muslims into Pakistan and Hindustan. We are better protected by the existence of a separate Islamic state on the eastern and western borders of Hindustan than we are by their submersion in Hindustan. Over and over again, he has repeated this idea of complete transfer of populations. So friends, what would be the treatment that would be meted out to the father of our constitution today? Would he receive the same death threats like Nupur Sharma? Would there be slogans like Sar-tan-se-juda, asking for his head to be separated from his body? Or would he be pulled up and censured by the very Supreme Court that is supposed to uphold the very constitution crafted by Babasaheb? I leave it up to you. You be the judge and let me know what is your verdict. So friends, that brings me to the end of my tribute to Bharat Ratna Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, the man who was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution, as well as being an outspoken leader for equality, fraternity and liberty. Here is the summary of points that we talked about. We explored the views of Dr. Ambedkar on Islam and what he discovered with regard to the Islamic view of slavery, treatment of non-Muslims, non-allegiance to nationhood, loyalty to religion above all else, and his solution for a complete transfer of populations at the time of partition. And finally, we also saw the duplicity of M.K. Gandhi during the time of Moplah massacres, in which a couple of thousand people were brutally killed. 100,000 or 100,000 people were rendered homeless who escaped from Kerala. The rest, of course, is history known to all of us. So that brings me to the end of the video. Thank you very much for your attention. In the next slide, I shall display the references that you can go to in order to find the truth yourself. Here are the links to the references which I have used in this video. Most of them will connect you to the documents or the books mentioned. Thank you.